Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the North East Non-League Show, episode 27. Ashington going up special, sponsored by Jade Bell, her game too. And joining us now, we have Ashington manager Ian Skinner. Ian, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight.
No problem, my pleasure.
Excellent. Lots to go forward. Looking at tonight as well, obviously looking at last season, going to next season as well. I like to say today been quite busy, which you seem to see a lot on social media at the minute. Club signing players left, right, and centre. I think Heaton's had about 4 or 5 the last couple of days. Exciting times for fans like myself for the non-league as well. So just looking back at last season and starting off as well, and going into last season, we mentioned signings, and a lot of people talking about the signings at Ashington Bishop. Did you think that put you under pressure from the start, or do you think you were looking at kind of obviously your size looking at that high anyway?
No, I think if we look back to the start of last season, I think we were quite fortunate. Similar to what you see at the moment with Heaton, we were quite fortunate that we managed to get our business done really, really early in pre-season, and that was something that we'd targeted. We felt as if having won the League Cup the previous season, we felt as if it and finished sort of sixth in the table. It was something where we felt we wanted to push on again if possible. And so recruitment started as early as it possibly could. And obviously we were fortunate in signing all our key targets, if the truth be known. Probably more than we thought. We probably spoke to the 6 lads we got in thinking, oh, well, if we can get 2 or 3 of them, brilliant. But then when we got all 6, it was sort of a bonus, really. And I sort of didn't come out publicly with it at the time, but I was saying to the lads that we were looking to bring in, look, the club are looking to push on again from last season, and to push on from where we finished the previous year would mean we would be in and around it, with the aim being making sure that when we came to what we class the business end of the season, that we were still in the mix to either win the title or at least try and get promoted.
Yeah, like you said, it paid off getting them players in early, and I mean, them first few games, it was winning game after game in all competitions, as well until the loss against Billingham and the Vars and scoring over 25 goals. How important is it to get that good start in the league, especially like you say when you're getting your plans, your players in, and having a good pre-season?
Massively important. I mean, the reason most managers want to get the business done early is because you want your squad ready to go in pre-season, because then it makes that lead in a little bit easier, if you like, because you're planned, you're prepared. Come the first game of the season, you're ready to hit the ground running. Whereas if you have a little bit of a slow start, or you're maybe still bringing players in during pre-season, then maybe you're not quite where you want to be come the first game. And I think getting the players in early and having a really, really good positive pre-season showed in our early season form when really we took the league by storm, and we were winning. I think we won the opening game 6-0 at home to see them, and it snowballed from there, really. And I'm a big believer in confidence and momentum in football, and we certainly had that going into the early part of the season. Not only were we playing really well, but we were scoring lots of goals to go with it as well. And what that did was it sort of set the tone for the rest of the season, really. We'd set the standards in the bar. And what we found very, very early in the season, that teams were sort of looking at us and maybe paying us huge compliments by looking to be that little bit tight and more defensive against us, which allowed us to dominate the ball and be on the front foot. And that probably helped us with some of the early wins that we had.
No, we're doing even Mark, even Samuel. Thank you everyone for watching, hitting smashing past double figures already. So thank you so much for your support as well. And like you say, the early stages of the season, obviously the FA Cup qualifying round starting to come in, and wins against Tower Law, Ashton United, Bradford Park Avenue, and you start to get the run together in the league, but also the FA Cup as well. Did you think at that point you'd be confident going on for another few rounds after that?
I think with the FA Cup, it's a double-edged sword. All the players want to play in it. Obviously, there's a chance to win a final at Wembley. Unfortunately, the final's Manchester City versus Manchester United, and not maybe Manchester City versus Ashington. But that was my little boy's dream, that we could get to the third round and maybe draw
Brilliant.
Manchester City at Woodhorn Lane. And I used that as a little bit of motivation to try and get through as many rounds as we can. But by double-edged sword, what I mean by that is obviously the players really want to play in the FA Cup because of the heritage and the prestige of the competition, and the club wants to do really well in it because it's a fantastic revenue stream. And we just felt that whenever we drew a team from further up the pyramid, it was an opportunity to really showcase and test ourselves to actually see how good we were and where we actually were in comparison to those. And as you say, it sort of snowballed from there. Really, we never looked beyond the next game. But certainly when we drew teams from further up the pyramid, we did what we always did throughout the season. We tried to prepare properly, get as much information on the opposition as we could, give the players the information in terms of where we thought we could hurt them, and what their strengths were, and what their areas were that we could exploit. And credit to the players, it was them that took that information on board and went out and produced. And what a cup run it was, to be fair.
It was amazing. I mean, like I say, early in the season, we had Neil Cooper on, then Brian Shot was also on as well. And we've just both said how special the FA Cup run was. And I know we had a vote a few weeks ago in the group, kind of what the highlight of the season was. I know a few people voted Gateshead, but then I had my own vote and I said the Ashington FA Cup run, just because the social media, the posters, the advertising that the club was doing, it was just kind of magic moments, and the amount of fans that were getting to games and people travelling down for the away games as well. I mean, how special was it being just involved with the club? What was kind of going on behind the scenes as well?
Yeah, it was great, really. It was fantastic that the community throughout the whole season and got behind the club, in particular in the cup run, and it was great to see smiles on people's faces, and especially some of those behind the scenes who have worked tirelessly over the last 4 years to move the club into the position where it was really 4 years ago, which was precarious to say the least, to where we are now, whereby if somebody had said we'd have the cup run we had, and then to win 2 trophies and promotion in the last 2 seasons, I think people would have asked you for a sniff of what you were drinking, to be honest with you. So yeah, it was great. It was great for those people who've put in hours and hours of hard work to get where we were. It was great for the players. It was great as the management team, and I'm pretty sure the fans, bearing in mind the numbers that they travelled in and then the numbers they turned out in at home. I mean, who would have ever thought Ashington would get 1,400 in for an FA Cup replay, which just blew everybody away, really. And yeah, it was special, and it'll live long in the memory of everybody who was involved in it.
No, it was amazing. Like I say, the third qualifying round as well, the 2-2 at Stockbridge and the 3-0 home win, which is absolutely amazing. But then the 3-1 lost to Kingsland as well. But sometimes you can use that as a motivation where you're playing higher teams up the pyramid, and you kind of think, well, what we do in the Northern League, you can play against teams like this every week. Was that kind of pushing you on into the league as well?
Most definitely. We openly spoke about the levels we got to in the FA Cup, and we talked about this is where we want to be. These are the teams we want to be playing week in, week out. We proved that we were good enough to hold our own and go on and beat those sides, and it was important that we took it into the league form and carried on that momentum. What I would say about the FA Cup is it's a fantastic competition when you're in it, but it's brutal competition the minute you're out. So leading into the Kings Lynn game, I was getting telephone calls from 5 Live, BBC Sport. I was invited down to the FA Cup draw for the first round proper live, but it was all on the basis that you beat Kings Lynn. So it was like, look, if you do, this is what's going to lie in front of you, and if you don't, thanks but no thanks. And that's the two sides to the FA Cup: the romance of going down to Kings Lynn and putting on a fantastic performance, but then the minute you're out the competition, nobody wants to know you anymore.
Yeah.
And I think we suffered a slight hangover after the Kings Lynn. I certainly remember, I think we lost to Heaton Stanington at home. And then we drew with Newcastle Benfield in the space of 7 days after being knocked out the FA Cup. And we did just suffer a little bit of a hangover from the highs of the publicity and the town hall talking about it, to suddenly not being in the competition anymore, and back down to reality of what was a really tough season in the Northern League.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at it now as well, you kind of see when the FA Cups are coming around and different cup games as well, that the played games against Ashton, you could just see them dropping down because of the amount of other games that were being played in the Northern League. Looking back now, do you think that was kind of too many games to catch up back up on that one?
It was always a fear. I think if you look back historically over the past few years, any team that is successful ends up having to play catch up throughout the season. And I remember speaking to the boys in the group really about towards the end of the season, and it was about a critical time where we played Newton Aycliffe twice in a close proximity, and I talked about Newton Aycliffe had led from the front for for a number of weeks because we were always playing catch up, and there was an opportunity whereby if we won one of our games in hand, or I think it was if we'd beaten Newton Aycliffe away, we could have went top for the first time in a considerable number of weeks. And we talked about psychologically how that could work in our favour in terms of a little bit what you've seen in the Premier League, if I'm honest, with Arsenal and Manchester City. I forget the exact stats. I heard them on the radio this morning, but I think Arsenal have been top of the league for something like 4 or 5 months, and Man City have been top of the table for the last 25 days or whatever, and they've gone on to be champions. And that's what we talked about, the psychological factor of Newton Aycliffe having always been out in front, where we tried to play catch up. And if we could have just gotten to that point whereby we'd gone above them, then psychologically that would have been a big test for them, instead of us psychologically always thinking this is a game in hand, we must win, this is a game in hand, we must win. But what I must say is full credit to Newton Aycliffe, worthy champions of the Northern League last year, went on a fantastic run post-Christmas. I think they only dropped 2 points at home in the whole season, and Brian Atkinson, somebody who I'd like to think I get along with really well, and hopefully if anybody connected to Newton Aycliffe's watching, again, congratulations to them, deserved champions of the Northern League this season.
No, brilliant as well. And before we get on to running again, just a massive thanks to everyone that is still watching, and like you say, getting past them double figures still as well. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button as well. It really helps the channel grow as well. And any questions, get them in. Also, and as the games went on, you could see obviously there was some good spells where you were getting win after win, and then just that one shot loss or a draw where that could have been a win. It was just stopping that momentum, like you say, to catch them back up. Was that kind of frustrating at times for yourself?
It was. But again, we've got to take into consideration the fact of the number of games we were playing in close proximity. Certainly, obviously, because it's a little fresh in the memory. There was 2 key games for me. One being Whitley Bay, whereby I made a personal decision to freshen the team up because we'd played a number of games. I think it was our 4th game or 5th game in the space of sort of 10 to 15 days, and I made the decision to freshen the team up at Whitley Bay, and it backfired somewhat. And I can remember coming out and speaking to Scoop afterwards. What a legend he is, by the way. I remember coming out and speaking to Scoop afterwards, and I said, I take the blame for that. We probably changed the team too much today, but we had one eye on the following game and the run in, and trying to keep everybody fresh and trying to keep winning games of football, which is tough. People will say, well, yeah, you see the pros do it, but why get caught up in that? But what we've got to remember is these lads who we're talking about at Ashington have been to work all day. Some of them have got labour-intensive occupations whereby the physical demands of work, and then we're asking them to train twice a week. Then we're asking them to play 3 times in a week, and sometimes we just felt as if we needed to try and freshen it up. And as I say, certainly the 2 that stick out would be Whitley Bay away and Wickham away, whereby I personally think I probably got the team wrong. Yeah.
And just football in general, it just works out perfect at times. And yes, Newton Aycliffe won the league, but going down to the last game of the season, obviously Bishop versus Ashington for that final playoff spot. How did you feel in the camp as well going into that one?
If I'm honest, it was something we tried to avoid because we knew it would. When you think about you play, what is it now, a 38-game season, and it could potentially come down to the last game. It was a situation I secretly wanted to avoid, but once we'd had those couple of disappointing defeats, just to still be in it was important come the last day. The pleasing thing was the result away at Towlow, where it was probably one of our best performances of the season, and we won 6-0. Obviously, there was a strong Bishop Auckland contingent there to watch that. So, if nothing else, they went away with lots of food for thought in terms of how we performed that day. But that also gave us the opportunity. You know, we were going to Bishop Auckland, whereby we had the draw as well as the win.
Yeah.
We went. I don't think I've ever set a team up to go and draw a game of football. So we went there to win a game. But obviously, the security blanket of knowing we only needed the draw worked in our favour, whereby we knew Bishop Auckland had to win, and therefore we knew that there'd be a period in the game where they needed to come out and really have a go at us. And teams who did that last season, we tended to punish them in terms of the spaces they left and the attacking prowess that we had. And if I'm honest, the game I was quite relaxed during the game because I'm somebody that thinks control the controllables. We'd worked really hard to get to that point. I trusted in the group of players. I repeatedly told the group of players they were the best group of players in the league and they needed to go out and prove that. And I just felt we probably had the better chances in the first half and fell a goal behind to what was a very, very dubious penalty. And then we, again, without being disrespectful to Bishop Auckland, we dominated the second half and should have won the game quite comfortably in the end. But as it was, it took an Andrew Cartwright penalty, who must have been our 6th, 7th, 8th penalty taker of the season because our penalty record last year was shambolic, and that's putting it politely. But we ended up getting the draw, and yeah, for the travelling fans who again travelled in the hundreds, we were just delighted for those. And I remember going across to them all at the end and shaking a few hands and just saying, "Look, one more to go. Stay with us, stick with us. One to go, and let's see if we can roar ourselves across the line."
Yeah, some great pictures. I remember seeing the pictures as well. And obviously, 1-1, you get the playoff spot, and not being kind of cocky because I love my North East non-league football, but you always see when we play sides higher up the pyramid from down the country, we just seem to be that little bit stronger. I don't know what it is for up here, but we're kind of confident going into the game against Glossop.
It's easy for me to sit here now and say I was, but
yeah,
it's the truth. I was very fortunate in terms of we got five full games. So I got recordings of 5 full games that Glossop had played, and I watched all 5 in their entirety. We planned on areas we could really hurt them. We identified who their key players were and the way in which they tried to play. But again, for me, I talk about confidence and the psychological factors in football quite a bit. Everybody was telling me about, these playoffs are all geared for the team higher up the pyramid. It's a one-off game. We've got to go away and visit those. But when you break it down into the reality of it, we were going to a side that had only won 8 games of football all season.
Exactly. Yeah.
We'd won 23 games of football. We'd lost less than 8 all season. So we were going there as a team in form. They were going there as a team that basically hadn't won very many games of football and found themselves in a relegation playoff place, and they'd only scraped that by getting a positive result at Bootle only a week earlier. So they'd by the skin of their teeth, they'd getting another chance at staying up. And I was quiet and reserved on the bus on the way down, and that's because I knew if we could play at the levels we were capable of, we would win the game. But again, it came down to the group of players, and it was the group of players that took on board the information, played to the levels we were capable of. And again, it's easy to say now, but it is the truth. It's probably one of our most comfortable victories of the season. And the scenes at the end were fantastic. It's almost as if I had a bit of an out-of-body experience, to be honest with you. I can still see it now. It was almost as if time stood still a little bit, and I saw all the players charge across to the supporters, and all the other staff from the dugout charged across, and I almost just stood there, and I just gave off the biggest sigh of relief, as if to say to myself, we've done it. We've done it. The hard work's been worth it. The boys have been fantastic, and credit to them, really. Credit to the players. It's the players that deserve all the credit. They've gone out there week in, week out, and they've wrote their names in history of the football club, and rightly so.
No, I definitely see. Quite comfortable, like you say, a goal in the first half to pretty much within 3 minutes of the second half. I mean, how good was the party after the game on the way back?
I'm not sure it quite sank in for me, and I had a little quiet spell with myself at the front of the bus. Certainly the back end of the bus was a bit raucous, and rightly so. And obviously the bus was full of light refreshments, shall we say. And I must actually, not that I'll be anybody on for Glossop, but I must say what a fantastic club and what a fantastic touch. Their chairman came onto our bus at the end of the game and basically spoke very openly and honestly and said some fantastic things about us in terms of the best team won on the day. He also put 4 cases of beer on the bus for us to enjoy our journey back. So little bit of a touch of class from Glossop on that, and yeah, I think the boys enjoyed the bus journey back.
No, that's brilliant. That. Just before we get on there, Daniel Taggart, great manager, Skinner played a season with him 3 or 4 years ago at Ashington. Class broke. We'll have to come and get and watch a few games next season. All the best to him and the team and the club as well. Class place. So nice to get comments in that, isn't
it? Dan's a great lad. He's a big lad now as well. I think he's took more to lifting super heavy weights. But no, Dan was great for Ashington and great player. Just a shame he doesn't play anymore.
And getting on to next season, as I can imagine, we've been obviously a good top manager, great coach. I mean, since that final whistle at Glossop, I can imagine it hasn't been no peace, no quiet. You've been working on things behind the scene, chatting to players as well. I mean, what's it been like the last few weeks for yourself?
Hectic, time consuming, and I would have to say tough as well. I'd have to say tough as well, to be honest with you. I go back to 4 years ago when this club was in a real precarious position. And in fact, we're talking a club that's got 150 years of history nearly didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And the hard work that's gone in to get it to where it is now is remarkable. We had a 5-year plan to try and move the club forward, and we've probably done it in 3 years in terms of winning silverware. We've been promoted within 4 years, so we're probably a year ahead of where we plan to be. Anybody who's been to Ashington will know that as a club we're very much infrastructure first. So the ground's fantastic. It needs a couple of little things done to it in terms of a pitch infill and a rotary turnstile. Other than that, the ground meets the criteria. But as a club, we're adamant that those things will be put in place first. Obviously, our travel's increased from, I think it was 1,800 miles we did last year, and this coming season we're going to do over 4,500 miles. In terms of travel costs at the minute, we're looking at 20k plus for the season. So again, that's something that we've now had to make sure we can ring fence all of that. So we're running on a really tight budget. There was this whispers across football last year that Ashington as a football club was spending vast amounts of money. I can categorically guarantee you we weren't. And we want to make sure the infrastructure is right. So we're working with very limited resources, and obviously with the increase in travel and the time constraints associated with that, then that's where the word tough comes into. So there's lots of tough conversations to be had because players want to be compensated for that time. Rightly so, but what the club won't do is put ourselves in a position where we found ourselves previously. Potential players who you want to bring into the club, I openly stated that I wanted every player from last season to stay. That wasn't a flippant throwaway comment. I genuinely wanted the opportunity to work with the same squad again because they were a fantastic squad. But I live in the real world, and I knew that we wouldn't keep everybody. And that's going to prove to be the case once we finalise everything. So it's been tough. It's been tough. We need to convince people to come on the journey for the right reason. And those people who maybe are just looking to line their pockets won't be the players that the football club will be looking to take on board moving forward.
Yeah, I can imagine well, like the main factor is obviously moving up the football pyramid is the squad and the players kind of committing, like you say, the work, the travel, if they're working throughout the day and travelling so many miles down south a bit, it's hard for players moving up the football pyramid as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, there were 1 or 2 players I signed at the beginning of last season and asked them to give me everything they could to help us move the club up the pyramid, sorry. And they were really open and said, yeah, I'd love the opportunity to come. But if we do achieve our goal, I'll not be able to continue on the journey with you for various reasons, whether it be they've got their own business or family commitments or just simply couldn't commit to the travel. So we knew along the way that we would potentially, if we succeeded in achieving our goal, we knew that we'd maybe lose 1 or 2, which is going to prove to be the case. But again, as I said earlier, that their names will still go down in history, but we'll get there. We'll get there in terms of investing in the right people who we think can continue to take the club forward.
Definitely. In the early season, obviously early doors at the minute, but looking at the squad from last season and obviously like you've had probably chats with players as well, what positions would you be looking at strengthening over the summer?
At the moment, obviously, knowing what I know, there's one or two areas where we might need to strengthen. Generally, it looks like if you're asking me now, I'm probably saying we're going to have a 70-30 split. So we'll probably keep 70% of the squad. We might lose 30%. We probably need to look to strengthen in a fullback position. Obviously, Andrew Cartwright, who was fantastic for us last year. He obviously won the league the previous year with North Shields, but was unable to continue on their journey due to other commitments. And he was open with me when we signed him in the summer to say that would be the case again. And it looks like that is going to prove to be the case, despite me putting these arm as far up his back as I possibly could because of how important he was for us. So he'll be a big miss and somebody that we'll need to replace, along with potentially one or two others.
Yeah, I mean, looking at next season as well, I think it's absolutely fantastic, the division. I mean, apart from other clubs, obviously in the league, you're going to be fighting against the likes of Consett, Dunstan, Hebburn, Newton Aycliffe, Stockton in the same league. And I imagine it's going to be kind of a scrap on and off the pitch at the moment. So if a player does come available, I can imagine there's going to be a few clubs scrapping for signatures, but also a battle on the pitch come the season kicking off as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, without being disrespectful, I think clubs, albeit that it's now compulsory that you have to move up the pyramid if you finish in a promotion place, I think it's only been good for the area. The fact that more teams have moved up through the pyramid, I think, without being disrespectful, I think more teams will look to try and move up the pyramid because the Northern League has become diluted in terms of, if I only think back 5, even possibly maximum of 10 years, where the Northern League was to where it is now, it's a shadow of its former self. And yeah, certainly pitting our wits against the likes of Consett and Newton Aycliffe and Hebburn and Dunstan and Stockman and all those will be great, as well as all the other new travels that we'll get to go to where the club haven't been for sort of best part of 60 years will be fantastic, and it'll be tough. The league that we're moving into is very much about teams being very, very hard working, very fit physically. Lots of the teams play very direct. That's not something we'll look to do. That's just not my beliefs in the way the game should be played. And I think we had success in the FA Cup by teams who did play direct against us. When we did get the ball, we looked to try and dominate possession and wear teams down and tire them out to create opportunities to score. And we'll look to do that next season. But what I would say is we're not going into the next league above to make the numbers up. I'm talking about playoffs if I can, or certainly when we get to again the business end of the season, making sure that we're in with a shout of potentially getting in the playoffs, or at least giving ourselves a chance. And that's what I'm saying to the players who we believe will retain, and that's what I'm saying to new players that we're looking to bring in. We're not going in to make the numbers up by any stretch of the imagination. We're going to try and see if we can sneak into those playoffs. Now, as I said earlier there, will that be easy? No, it'll be a real tough test because you will have 5, 6, 7, 8 very, very strong, dominant clubs in the league next year. But I believe if we can put the squad together with the right makeup that we're looking for, then on our day we'll be able to give people a game and be competitive.
No, it's great to hear, like you say, going for the playoffs, because you'll kind of hear some people that's come on and say we're looking just in with managers that we find to stay up or to fight mid-table. But I think you've got to give players, like you said, that you're trying to get in that confidence that we're going to be going for this. It's kind of putting on a lower level, saying that you want to stay up or want to do this. It gives players a bit more confidence that they all go in the right direction, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Listen, we tried not to. I shied away at the early part of this season about, we want to get promoted, and I think after the blistering start we had, I just came out and said it. Yes, this club believes it's put a squad together that's capable of getting promoted, and that's the aim. I believe we're capable of putting a squad together next season that gives us a chance Now, people might be recording this now and use it against me throughout the season, next season, but I'm confident we can put a squad together that'll give us a chance of being in a position to hopefully come the latter part of the stages, be it still in with a shout and maybe trying to sneak into a playoff spot. And sneak in would be probably the right word.
Yeah, it'd be great to see the top 7 just literally North East clubs. It would be absolutely fantastic. I think another couple of years it'd be just full of Northern League clubs going up, won't it?
I think so. I think if you look at it, and obviously the playoff situation changes next year in terms of it isn't a relegation / promotion in a playoff or whatever the correct terminology was this year. It's actually the top team in the Northern League will go up, and I think it's second and third playoff for promotion as well. So you've got 2 teams potentially, or 2 teams almost guaranteed from the Northern League to get promoted again next year. So if that happens year on year over the next 5 years, then there's 10 more Northern League teams to potentially move up the pyramid.
No, it's going to be a great season. Austin just mentioned there, can't wait for next season. Been almost every home game since December 2019, which was his first game. Was a gloss up with my son. What a day! We'd love to see us get 700 every home game next season. I know it would just be so good to see the fans come out. I know we had the South Shields chairman on just before our little break as well over the summer, and it's I think a lot of people kind of say, "Oh, money's getting chucked about here, money at certain clubs," but if you're getting fans, like for example South Shield, 2,500 people turn up, it's paying for itself. They've got the 3G pitch, and it's the same at Northern League clubs, Ashington as well, in the higher leagues, where if you're getting 700 or 1,000 people coming in, it just helps the club so much, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, I make no bones of the fact that we are a club that, and Brian, who I know has been on the show, he'll have said exactly the same. We are a club that are built on an income generated model. So every penny we spend, we have to generate an income. We haven't got a financial backer. So you mentioned Jeff there. Jeff's fortunate to be a very successful businessman and being able to help the club, albeit then working towards a more sustainable model now. Literally every penny every penny of expenditure we have to generate on income, and that's why we'll have to be really prudent and careful with recruitment, because as I said on a number of occasions now, we won't jeopardize the future of this football club that's been around in existence for more than 150 years, and we want it to be around for another 150 years. And so we need the fans more than ever, and they were brilliant last year. They can't underestimate the part they played in not only the support they gave the team, but also the support they gave the club financially by paying their money to come through the gate and watch. And we'll need them more than ever to come in the numbers next year to help us sustain where we want to be, which is in the league we've moved into and beyond. Though I make no bones or secrets of the fact we will hit a difficult period next season whereby we might find ourselves go through a period of time of games 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think if you look at North Shields this year, tapping the doors, I think North Shields had a little period where they went 10 games without a win, because that's how tough and relentless the Northern Premier League East can be. But we'll need the fans to stick with us at that time and maybe not lose interest or drop off, because we have been very fortunate to watch a successful start for the last 2 years. But we'll need them to stick with us through the tough times so that the income they generate by coming to support the team is key and critical to the football club and making it sustainable, really.
Oh, 100%. But from ourselves, obviously, wish you the very best of luck for next season, and hopefully have you on in a few months' time talking about a good start in the division as well.
No problem. Thank you very much for your time.
Excellent. But no, again, thank you everyone that's been watching. Like I say, some great. I think we've hit double figures pretty much all night. So thank you so much as well. If you can help the club as much as you can, get it shared out and get the Ashington word spread. We'll try and get as many fans down to as many North East games as we can next season as well. And we're going to help push that as much as we can in our Facebook group as well. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button as well to help the channel grow. Also, tomorrow night, back again, double show this week. Tomorrow night, 9:10 again, episode 28, with the manager coming on, Lee Haldane, talking about his time at Wickham, Ashington, and obviously mental health as well, which is very important to Lee, which we're going to be touching on as well. But again, thank you everyone for watching, and Ian, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your night as well there.
No problem. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.